Picture this. It's 1893 at the Chicago World's Fair. The crowd gasps in amazement as Nikola Tesla passes electrical current through his body, making light bulbs glow in his hands. He stands there, sparks dancing around him, demonstrating his mastery over electricity. The audience sees a wizard, a genius, a man touched by divine inspiration. But what they don't see is Tesla's private hell, his hands shaking from countless electrical burns, his nerves permanently damaged from repeated high-voltage experiments on himself. This isn't just showmanship, it's self-destruction in the name of science. You might think being Nikola Tesla meant a life of glory, recognition, and the satisfaction of changing the world. But what if I told you that every breakthrough, every invention, every moment of genius came with a price so steep that it eventually destroyed him? Today we're diving deep into the devastating reality of being history's most brilliant yet tortured inventor. And trust me, it's far worse than you could imagine. First, we'll explore how Tesla's own mind became his worst enemy, trapping him in a prison of obsessive behaviors and physical torment that made every day a living nightmare. Then, we'll reveal how his dedication to advancing humanity led to brutal betrayals and exploitation that left him not just broke, but broken. And finally, we'll see how his refusal to compromise his vision condemned him to a life of isolation so complete that even his greatest achievements became instruments of his suffering. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why being Nikola Tesla wasn't just difficult, it was a life sentence of perpetual torment. And if stories about the dark side of genius fascinate you, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more deep dives into the hidden struggles of history's most remarkable minds. The mind that became a prison. Let me tell you about the night of March 13th, 1895. Tesla was in his Manhattan laboratory, preparing for what he believed would be his greatest triumph, demonstrating a wireless lighting system that could revolutionize the world. The lab was filled with his life's work, prototypes, notes, and cutting-edge equipment worth millions in today's money. Then, fire struck. As Tesla watched from the street, flames consumed everything. But here's where the true horror of being Tesla reveals itself. Instead of running from the inferno, he stood there, calculating precisely how long each piece of equipment would take to melt, reciting the exact chemical reactions occurring as his dreams turned to ash. His obsessive mind wouldn't let him look away or even feel normal human emotion. It forced him to analyze his own destruction with scientific precision. This wasn't just a personality quirk, it was a glimpse into the daily torture of being Tesla. His mind, the same instrument that gave him his genius, was also his tormentor. Let me show you what I mean. In 1914, at the height of his fame, Tesla was invited to a prestigious dinner at Delmonico's restaurant in New York. As the waiter approached with the first course, Tesla began his ritual. Counting each step the waiter took, measuring the exact dimensions of his plate, and calculating the cubic volume of each piece of food. The other guests watched in uncomfortable silence as he demanded 18 napkins, using each one exactly once before discarding it. When the host tried to engage him in conversation, Tesla couldn't respond. He was compulsively walking around the table 3 times, his fingers twitching as he counted each step. The dinner, meant to honor him, became yet another public display of his private torment. But perhaps the most devastating example came during his work on the Wardenclyffe Tower project. In 1901, as construction began, Tesla's compulsions reached a breaking point. He would spend hours arranging his tools in perfect geometric patterns, unable to begin work until everything aligned with his mental requirements. Workers would arrive each morning to find him still there from the night before, having spent hours rearranging equipment instead of sleeping. One morning, his chief engineer found Tesla in tears, physically unable to enter the construction site because the number of rivets in view wasn't divisible by 3. The man who could visualize entire machines in perfect detail couldn't step foot in his own laboratory because of the mathematical prison in his mind. If you've ever felt trapped by your own thoughts or struggled with compulsions, share your experience in the comments. Sometimes knowing we're not alone in our battles can be the first step toward understanding. The price of uncompromising vision. You might think Tesla's brilliant mind was his greatest asset, but let me show you how it became the very thing that destroyed him financially and professionally. And no story better illustrates this than the infamous War of Currents with Thomas Edison. In 1884, Tesla arrived in America with just 4 cents in his pocket and a letter of introduction to Edison. When they met, Tesla explained his alternating current AC system, a revolutionary approach to electricity distribution. Edison, already heavily invested in direct current DC, made Tesla an offer, $50,000, worth over $1 million today, if he could improve Edison's DC generators. Tesla worked 18-hour days for months, sleeping in his lab, skipping meals, pushing himself to the brink of collapse. When he finally succeeded, proudly presenting his improvements to Edison, the response crushed him. Edison laughed, saying, "Tesla, you don't understand American humor. That was just a joke." Instead of the promised payment, Edison offered him a $10 weekly raise. But here's where being Tesla became truly painful. Any normal person would have compromised, accepted the raise, or found another way to profit from their work, not Tesla. His mind, with its rigid adherence to principle and mathematical precision, couldn't accept anything less than his pure vision. He walked away with nothing. This pattern repeated throughout his life. In 1888, Tesla signed a contract with George Westinghouse to license his AC patents for $2.50 per horsepower. Generated, a deal worth billions in today's money. But when Westinghouse faced financial troubles in 1897, Tesla's rigid principles led him to tear up the contract, forfeiting all future royalties to save his friend's company. His exact words were, "Westinghouse, you have been my friend. You believed in me when others had no faith. You were brave enough to go ahead. I don't want to add to your burdens. Here is your contract, and here is my contract. I will tear both of them to pieces." That single act of principle condemned him to poverty for the rest of his life. While others got rich off his inventions, Tesla lived in increasingly modest hotel rooms, accumulating debt he could never repay. Perhaps the most painful example came in 1917. Tesla was awarded the Edison Medal by the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. Yes, named after his old rival. Despite being nearly destitute, Tesla refused to accept it in person. His principles wouldn't allow him to celebrate an award named after the man who had betrayed him, even though the recognition might have helped restore his reputation and finances. If this story of the principle over profit resonates with you, hit that like button. In a world that often chooses money over morals, Tesla's unwavering integrity cost him everything. The isolation of innovation. Being Tesla meant being perpetually ahead of your time, and paying the ultimate price for it. Let me show you exactly how his revolutionary ideas condemned him to a life of crushing isolation. In 1899, Tesla set up a laboratory in Colorado Springs to develop his wireless power transmission system. The experiments were so powerful, they caused man-made lightning bolts over 130 feet long and accidentally overloaded the city's power plant, causing a blackout. But that's not the tragic part. One night, while working alone, as he always did, Tesla detected what he believed were signals from another planet. He spent weeks analyzing them, becoming increasingly excited about potential communication with extraterrestrial intelligence. When he finally shared his discovery with the scientific community, he wasn't met with interest or even skepticism. He was met with ridicule. The press, which had once celebrated him as a genius, now portrayed him as a madman. Former colleagues distanced themselves. Investors pulled out of his projects. Tesla found himself not just physically alone in his lab, but intellectually isolated from the entire scientific community. The isolation grew worse with each passing year. By the 1920s, Tesla was living in the New Yorker Hotel, room 3327, chosen because its digits added up to 3, of course. His only companions were the pigeons he fed from his window. He would spend hours caring for injured birds, particularly one white pigeon that he claimed visited him every day. "I loved that pigeon," he later said. "Yes, I loved her as a man loves a woman, and she loved me." The final years of his life paint perhaps the most heartbreaking picture of what it meant to be Tesla. In 1943, at the age of 86, he was found dead in his hotel room. The brilliant mind that had lit up the world had spent its final days in near total isolation, talking only to pigeons, still working on inventions that nobody would see. The hotel maid who found his body reported that she had ignored the "Do Not Disturb" sign after 2 days of silence. When she entered, she found Tesla's body, and next to it, pages of calculations and diagrams for what he claimed was his most important invention yet, a device that could end all wars. Those papers, like so many of his later ideas, were immediately confiscated by the FBI and never seen again. If this journey through Tesla's life has shown you the true cost of being ahead of your time, make sure to subscribe. Together, we'll continue exploring the untold stories of those who changed our world, often at the cost of their own happiness. Being Nikola Tesla meant having a mind that could imagine the future but couldn't find peace in the present. It meant watching others get rich from your ideas while you died in debt. It meant being celebrated as a genius while feeling more connected to pigeons than people. And perhaps most tragically, it meant carrying the weight of world-changing innovations that the world wasn't ready to accept. In the end, Tesla's greatest curse wasn't his poverty, his isolation, or even his mental torment. It was the burden of seeing a future that he could never fully bring into being. And that, perhaps, is the cruelest fate a visionary can suffer.